Good morning, good afternoon. Today we're going to be learning about consulting, right? We're going to be learning about consulting, and Ncube will be leading us. I'll ask Marka to break us. Huh?
Is peace and conflict, right? As it is on the poster.
Okay, we're going to be talking about peace and conflict. I'll ask Marka to break us.
The first one.
We couldn't hear you.
Maga, what's wrong with your mic?
Okay,
We can't hear you. There's something wrong. Okay, we can proceed, Tina. Tina?
Over to you, Building-Busi. Ncube.
Okay, you can call me Ncube. It's perfectly fine. Hi guys, I want to say happy Sabbath to all of you. I hope you had a morning service. So my name is Ncube, and today I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the work that I do, right? And then you are going to have a chance to ask me questions, and that way I can tell you even more. I did not prepare a PowerPoint because I want us to talk and interact and discuss. So you have to promise me that you're going to be active, you're going to participate. Is that a deal?
Bonjour. Bonjour, and Lindo, come.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I'm sure you all have heard of Beatitudes. Lariel, are you saying something? Okay, he's muted. So you've all heard of the Beatitudes, right? Or the Sermon on the Mount. Now, if we read Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, there is a verse there that talks about peacemakers, and that is the kind of work that I do. I'm going to read it in 4 different translations. So the Good News translation says, "Happy are those who work for peace. God will call them his children." The Holman Christian Standard Bible says, "The peacemakers are blessed, for they will be called the sons of God." And then the International Standard Version says, "How blessed are those who make peace, because it is they who will be called God's children." And then I am going to read the New Heart English Bible. It says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God." So we see from that verse that God expects us to make peace, right? Not only peace in our own lives, but to help other people get peace or live at peace amongst themselves. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Have any of you ever been in like a big fight, like a major fight with your friends or with your mom and dad or with your brother and sister? Have any of you been in a really horrible fight? Yeah. If so, maybe just unmute yourself and tell me a little bit about what that fight was about. Okay. And how did you resolve it? Don't be shy. Don't be shy, Nkosnati. You can speak.
Lindo,
No.
answer. You have been in a fight. Can you?
Who?
Eh?
With who?
With your sister.
I don't know how to explain it.
You don't know how to explain it. Okay, Isabella, explain it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different.
Talk loudly. Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know. There's been a lot of different fights.
Yeah, but talk loudly.
Okay, they are shy at the moment. It's fine. But what I know, right, is that all of us have been in a fight. And fights are not very nice, are they?
No.
They're not. So what happens when we're in fights? One, we get very angry with each other, right? And we say very horrible things to each other. And sometimes we get brothers and sisters even fighting physically, beating each other up. And then after that, people just go on mute, like they don't talk to each other for hours or for days, until maybe your mom and dad forces you to talk to your brother or forces you to talk to your sister, right? Or at school, and then you're saying, I'm not ever going to talk to you again. You're saying this to your friend. And maybe for a whole week, you don't talk to each other or something, until one of your friends or someone comes and says, but you guys stop this. Why are you still fighting? Just come together and make up and be friends again. That's what normally happens, right?
Yes.
Talk to me, talk to me.
Come and talk here.
Sometimes with me.
Yes?
I said sometimes with me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sometimes it happens with you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's good. So I'm not talking about something that is strange to you guys, right? And you know what? Even adults behave like that. Sometimes adults fight as well, you know? And they will fight and not talk to each other for 2 days, for 2 weeks. And sometimes they don't talk to each other for years, until maybe something happens. And then they realize, I actually need to talk to that friend again, or to my brother, or to my mom, or to my work colleague. So the same thing happens at a bigger scale. The same thing can happen in a country, right? Where maybe politicians, big political parties, you know, the leaders that lead us in our countries, or say maybe in Johannesburg, you could find that maybe the mayor and some of his councillors are fighting and they're not talking to each other. Now that's the work that I do. You know, just like someone comes and tells you to talk to your brother again, just like someone says to you, but come on, you be the reasonable one, be the one that will make peace and allow things to return to normal. That is the work that I do, okay? So in my kind of work, there's different kinds of fights. I don't know what happened there. Okay, so there's different kinds of fights, or what we call conflict. So,
Well, the computer is running out of battery, so I have to use Daddy's screen.
oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, so sometimes we help people that have had major arguments. It could be two political parties, maybe that are fighting over elections, right? The country is about to go into an election. And one party, one political party can say, the other party is attacking our supporters, and we are not going to participate in this election because of violence, right? So we will then go in and talk to both parties and try and understand what this conflict is really about. And try and understand even whether what the other party is saying is true or is not true. So we help countries, we help organizations. Sometimes these fights are in churches, right? Or in companies or in local communities, you know, like a suburb or a town, people can fight, maybe over water, or maybe this mayor has overstayed. It's different fights, right? But people are no longer talking to each other. So we will then go in and assist them to be able to talk to each other again. We often start off by encouraging them to just come round the table and listen to each other and listen to how the one party behavior is affecting the other party and vice versa. And we call that dialogue or facilitated dialogue, okay? Because remember, when you're in a fight with your brother and sister, you don't even want to see them, right? You don't even want to talk to them until maybe your mom and dad calls you and sits both of you down and says, tell me, what is this all about? So that's some of the ways in which we then go in and help. Now, sometimes we facilitate dialogue, and the people that are in this conflict get to a point where they realize, oh, okay, so when you behaved like this, I thought you actually wanted to come and attack me. But now I realize that maybe I overreacted. Or maybe I was just afraid, but I was afraid over nothing. And then they can resolve their conflict and begin to talk to each other as they did before. But sometimes you may be in a situation where they have fought, maybe one person's house has been burnt down, or some people have been arrested if it's political fights, and the fight has really turned nasty and violent. Now, at that time, we would then come in with a different process, which is now what we call a mediation, right? A mediation is when now the fight, okay, so like if the fights are on a scale of 1 to 5, dialogue is when the fights are still at 1, 1.5, you know? People are not yet that angry at each other. There's not much damage that has happened, so we can easily bring them around the table and help them talk. But now, when the fight is like at intensity level 4, going on to 5, then we come in and mediate. And there are different steps that we follow. We first of all start by talking to the different people in the fight individually. So when I'm saying individually, I mean, if it's politics, it would be like the ANC leadership, the EFF leadership, the DA leadership. We talk to them separately. And we then also sit back and we talk to other people that can give us more information about what this fight is all about. And we call that doing an analysis. An analysis is basically just trying to really get to the bottom of the fight. Because, you know, so many times, just like in your fights with your brothers and sisters, say maybe Maka is having a fight, right, with their sibling, they will come to mom and dad and say, oh, I'm not allowed to use the phone anymore, and he's just hogging the phone, right? And then the sister will say, no, that's not true. He's been playing with the phone for the past 2 hours, and now I'm asking him to use the phone and he's saying no. So you can see that it's one fight, but each person is telling their side of the story or their understanding of the fight. So if there's someone else who's been playing with them, maybe Nkosnati and Ncube have also been in the room, we would then talk to Nkosnati and Ncube and say, tell us what really happened here. And then maybe Nkosnati will say, actually, they've been sharing the phone 15 minutes each. But now Magabongwe is refusing, his time is up, and is refusing to hand over the phone. So you can see that the story is now different from what Magabongwe and his sister have told us. So this is what an analysis helps us understand. It really helps us to get to the bottom of what this fight is all about. And once we have done our analysis, we will then go back to the parties and say, okay, so it seems you are really struggling to talk to each other, but all of you realize that we need to find a way of ending this fight and getting you guys to relate to each other nicely and behave as mature adults. Is this what you want? And then each party will say yes, yes, yes. And then we'll say, okay, maybe sometimes they would actually say, we think we need someone to come and mediate and help us to deal with this conflict. And then we would go through a process of identifying someone that all the parties trust, someone that all the parties really believe can help them talk to each other. I'm sure maybe sometimes you've watched on TV where you hear that President Thabo Mbeki has gone to mediate in Burundi, or President Cyril Ramaphosa has gone to mediate in the DRC. So a mediator basically is someone who helps the people in conflict to begin to talk about their conflict. Remember, they are in a major fight now. They don't trust each other. They don't want to see each other anymore. But they all trust the mediator. So they are willing to talk to each other through the mediator. And what a mediator does is he or she allows an opportunity for the parties to come around the table, talk about the fight that they are in or the conflict that they are in through the mediator, the trusted party. And there are steps that are followed to get to that point where the people that are in the fight are able to explain the fight, able to explain what they need done to resolve the fight. And then they go into what we call a problem-solving process, where they look at the different ways that this conflict can be handled and can be resolved, until they get to that stage where they agree on the different. And then once they agree, the mediator with the team of technical people that works with them, with the mediator, they then draw up what is called a peace agreement, which says, we have been fighting over water in this community. This is how we are going to manage the little water supply that we have. And then they talk about the steps that they are going to follow. They agree on who is going to do what and within what time frame. And then all of them will sign that, yes, we have to deal with this issue this way. So that is what mediation is all about. Something else that we do is sometimes, especially when you talk about countries, like we all know, or I'm sure you've all heard about the genocide that happened in Rwanda many years ago in the early 90s, right? Where after that, then there was peace in Rwanda. And then now the country had to start working towards rebuilding the nation, what we call nation building. In other words, moving away from viewing each other as Tutsis and Hutus as enemies, but now saying we want to have one identity as Rwandese. And we are now going to focus on rebuilding our nation, our values, and who we are as a people, regardless whether you are a Hutu or a Tutsi. Sometimes this happens in countries that experienced civil war. For instance, a few years ago, I was working in Sierra Leone. And we know that, again, many years ago in the early, late 90s and so forth, Sierra Leone actually experienced what we call civil war, right? Until eventually there was peacemaking, an agreement was reached, and then people came together again and decided, we want to move forward as one people, one nation. And so when now an agreement has been signed and there is peace again, there's often a lot of work that needs to happen to rebuild the nation as well as to rebuild the state. Because remember, when a country is at war, roads are damaged, houses are damaged, people don't go to school anymore, there is no hospitals that are working, so many things. But also, even though a peace agreement has been made, there is still a lot of work at community level to try and help people to live together as one again. And we call that peace building, where it is now a long-term effort through different activities and programs that will really help that country function as one country again. And some of the peace building activities can be things like training people in how to understand conflict, how to appreciate what conflict is, and how to be able to handle conflicts when they happen in the future, so that people don't go back to war. But peace building sometimes is also about rebuilding the relationship and the social fabric in a society. Now, oftentimes what happens is, you know, we would also realize that, okay, this community now needs to work on reconstructing roads. So we will go in with people who are development experts, and we would say, okay, we are going to build a road for peace. As people who were fighting before come together, they live in the same community, and they start working and building this road. Peace builders will be there weaving in messages of the importance of working together, living together quietly, and loving and appreciating each other, celebrating the differences, doing so in a way that will build what we call local capacities for peace. Yeah, so basically that is the work that I do. Now, you may ask yourself, how does one become a conflict practitioner or a peace builder? So back when I started doing this work, which is going back now, maybe 16, 17 years ago, there were very few of us who were professional conflict practitioners or peace builders. And this kind of work was started, the people that were really at the forefront of this work were religious leaders, particularly the Mennonite church, you know, like your Baptist church, your Brethren in Christ church. They are the ones who, when countries were in conflict, would go in and try and build bridges and mend bridges. So one of the founding fathers of the peace building fraternity or discipline is someone called John Paul Lederach. He is an American Mennonite who worked in many war-torn countries to try and help countries overcome conflict, as well as to train people to be able to have the skills to resolve their own conflict. Now, in South Africa, before independence, there was conflict, right? We had Umkhonto weSizwe and the PAC in fighting. We had ANC and PSC people in exile. And there were local peace committees that were formed in South Africa as a way of trying to reduce violence and to bring people together. South Africa is one country where its independence was brought about through negotiation.
I know.
Okay, and this again meant that people needed capacity in terms of skills of how to negotiate. There were other people, and the Norwegians and the Swedes, who would take the ANC and the Boer party maybe to Norway, their leaders, and just get them to begin to have a conversation about how can South Africans live together in peace and harmony. So the Mennonites, as I said, were the fathers of this work. And then eventually, we started seeing them offering degree programs in peace building, in conflict. And now there are many universities that offer those degrees. But a lot of us who started this work way back then, we were just trained in conflict analysis and conflict mediation. We didn't necessarily have degrees, but there was one place in South Africa that did a lot of work on the African continent, the Center for Conflict Resolution. And the founding fathers of that work in South Africa and in Africa, very good colleagues of mine up to this day. There's Dr. Andries Odendaal, who was at the Center for CCR, Center for Conflict Resolution. He lives in Cape Town. There is Chris Spies, who did a lot of training in many African countries, as well as in Guyana. He is based in Stellenbosch, and a number of other people. But now, as I say, if you want to become a peace builder, a professional peace builder, you can actually decide, okay, this is my career that I want to pursue. And then you can go to university. There's Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. I know they offer a degree right up to PhD level in South Africa. And there's many other universities internationally, as well as in my own country in Zimbabwe. Solusi University has an undergraduate program. Africa University has a degree program, and I think a few others. But let me tell you guys, this job is not for the faint-hearted, okay? So you have to be someone who is willing to put your own life at risk. Because sometimes you are sent to go and help countries where there's actually war and where there is fighting. And you will go there, depending on who you are working for. I normally do most of my work with the United Nations system, supporting UNDP country offices. So there is a greater degree of safety for us as practitioners. But even then, I mean, last year, I lost a very good colleague that I had worked with in South Sudan, Anil Raj. He had now moved to Afghanistan. And they were coming from a meeting with a colleague in their car in Kabul. And then they were caught in a traffic jam. And someone threw a hand grenade on the roof of their car. It exploded, and Anil died on the spot. He was an amazing human being, a dedicated peace builder, someone that I had worked with very closely in a project in South Sudan. And today, Anil sadly lost his life in the pursuit of peace. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So you have to be willing to lose your life or to lose maybe your arm or your eye or whatever if you are caught in crossfire. Something else that you need to know is that it's a very stressful career sometimes, especially when you are working with politicians and they are argumentative, they don't want to hear what you have to say, or you are working with armed groups. Because at times, just getting to talk to them and get them to that point where they are willing to come around the table takes a lot of hours, long hours. And sometimes you're working well into the night. And then the next morning, you just have to keep going. And remember, because all of them are fighting, they are relying on you as the mediation team or as the individual mediator or the practitioner helping them. They are relying on you for energy and strength to believe that this process will help them find peace. So it demands a lot of you physically. I often find when I'm on mission that sometimes you are thinking so hard that you struggle to sleep at night. I've been for the past maybe 8-10 years. I was actually taking melatonin to try and help me. Because remember, as the technical person, even with the UN team, right, you are advising the head of the United Nations system in the country, the resident coordinator. He is not a technical person, but he is the political head and he is the lead. So he relies on your technical expertise to resolve things, and you can't afford to embarrass him, right? So your mind is always racing, you're always playing things over and over and saying, what is the best approach here? So it can be a very stressful job. But that said, there is nothing more rewarding than this work. When you get to that place where you see that eventually people have made peace, eventually people who were enemies, who didn't even want to see eye to eye, are now able to sit around the room, sit around the table, laugh and smile. What I have found is that, and this is true for most of my colleagues that I personally work with in this space, is that really you need a higher power to turn your own frustrations and your own pressure and stress to. And so you'll find that a lot of peace builders
is giving birth in the next 10 minutes. I'll see if I can get everyone back on the line, but we missed them.
They are people that believe either in God or they meditate and they practice yoga. And so you really need to be someone who has a strong spiritual foundation to be able to navigate this space. What I've also learned is that you need a strong support base of colleagues that you can call when you are in a distress situation yourself. Because remember, you can't really talk to the people that you are supposed to be helping, right? So you need someone who will be able to be like a sounding board to you, where you can bounce off ideas with, where you can share your own frustrations and your own challenges. And I remember I think it was 2014, I was working in Uganda, helping a group of elders who wanted to become like the elders that would help Uganda resolve some of its own problems, the Uganda Elders Forum. And I had a very good colleague and brother who was working in Kenya at that time. And I remember one afternoon, he called me and he said, my sister, I am done. I am just so done with this place. I have called my wife. I have told her I am walking away from this assignment. I can't take this anymore. And he said, I've booked a flight. I am heading back home. So I said to him, but you can't do this. Why? What has happened? I've never heard you speak like this. And so we were able to talk his challenge through and get to that space where, and I remember he then called me like 2 days later and he said, Sisi, thank you for talking to me. And because I respect you, I've decided to stay. So we do get to those points where you are just so frustrated and you just say, you know what, I'm done. And sometimes you even think to yourself, I've been in situations where I say to myself, you know, I don't say this to the parties, but I say, you know what, this is your country. If you don't want to fix it, it's your baby. But then, you know, you go home, you sleep, and the next day you wake up and you say, I can't give up on people. I can't give up on this process. So you need people that will help you, re-energize you, help you refocus, give you that support to keeping on. Because the challenges and the frustrations can really, really be real. Let me also say that it can be even more difficult working in this field if you are a woman or a girl. Because, you know, in Africa, most of our top politicians are men, right? And I remember, especially when I was much younger than I am now, I mean, you'd walk into a meeting, you are the technical advisor, and you walk into a meeting and they take one look at you and they think, who are you? I remember one time in Malawi, there was conflict there, and the UN sent a special envoy who was representing the Secretary General. Now that is big, eh? Because whatever that envoy says, they are saying it on behalf of the UN Secretary General. And a good colleague of mine had been assigned to the envoy who was mediating or facilitating this negotiation. But somehow, I don't know, but in that particular meeting on that day, I was working there as a peace and development advisor. But my colleague was the one who was accompanying this mediation process. But on that day, he wasn't invited to the meeting, and then I was asked to attend. So we got there. It was a mediation between civil society groups. This was 2012. And government representatives, and this UN envoy who happened to be a lady. So we got in there. I had never met her, she had never met me. She had her own political advisor that she had come with, but I had been doing all the political briefings, etc. beforehand. So then the meeting started, the introductions were made, and then we normally do a process where we decide which party is going to tell their story first. So she did that, and then the civil society group was supposed to speak first. And then the leader of the civil society group said, okay, we are not proceeding with this mediation until one of the human rights activists and a lawyer who had been arrested, they said, until Ralph Kasambara is released, we are not going to participate in this. Meanwhile, they had come. This lady had flew into Malawi from Kenya, where she was based. And all of us were now sitting in this room in Lilongwe, and they said that. And then they said, so until that demand is met, we are walking out. And I mean, this is an Under-Secretary General that they were walking out on. So they stood up, the whole 7 of them, and left the room. The government people were on one side. Her political advisor, the governance advisor who was there, and myself were on the other end of the room. And she sat there now. I could tell that she was now not sure how to proceed. So I then said to her political advisor, tell her to adjourn the meeting. We find a way of caucusing with these civil society people and find out how else can we continue this process, because the demand that they are making is something that the Under-Secretary General it's out of her control. This is a matter that the courts need to decide. And then the political advisor said, no, go ahead and tell her. So I then went, sat next to her and said, ma'am, can I say something? And then she said, okay. So first of all, I had to introduce myself. And then I whispered to her that maybe let's ask the government team to stay here. We find a way of contacting the civil society group and we caucus with them. And then hopefully we can come back to the dialogue. So maybe this is what you need to communicate to the government team. And then she said to me, no, you tell them. And I thought, but they don't know me. I have not been part of this process. But anyway, she's my boss, so what could I say? So I then said, gentlemen, I think it was all men, maybe there was one woman. I said, allow us to just say something to suggest how we can move forward. And then there was a former government minister who was part of that group. And he said to me, and who are you? In a very aggressive manner. And rightfully so, because I had not been introduced. I was just a stranger that they were seeing for the first time. But fortunately, there was a religious leader whom we had been at a workshop with, and we had just come back to Lilongwe the day before. So I then introduced myself and said, I am the Peace and Development Advisor. I have just been asked to join this process. Forgive me for not having been here when the introductions were done, but this is the process that we are proposing. So kindly allow us to go and caucus whilst you remain here. And then that religious leader said, yeah, okay, Busi, it's fine. I guess, this is now, mediation practice, which is what, you've been teaching us over the past 2.5 days. And that's how, I then got rescued out of that situation. But it can be very, very difficult in terms of navigating that gender dynamic. But over the years, I've actually also learned that it has worked in my favor in a number of times. Because, generally I'm a very, just laid back person. I think I'm unassuming. So what I found is that people will give me so much information, because they're thinking, we are talking above her head. She's not really getting this. And therefore it has been beneficial. It has been an advantage to me to be a woman, and more so in my younger years, this young woman that people think, she doesn't really get what we're talking about. So it has served me well. But it can be a challenge, especially when you are working in highly male-dominated, highly patriarchal environments. So in a nutshell, that is what I would say. Now, what are the skills that you need to have as an individual, your own individual abilities? One, you need to be a very good listener. And you need to develop the ability to listen without writing notes. Because, when people see that, okay, they're talking to you, you're writing things down, guess what? They become more guarded, right? They're careful about what they say. So you need to be a very, very good listener. You also need to be somebody who is patient. Because can you imagine, tempers are flaring, and then you also get in there and you start losing your temper as well. You can make situations worse than trying to calm things down. So you need to be someone who is patient, but also patient from a perspective of sometimes people don't really understand what you're trying to do. And so you need to patiently keep repeating yourself and convincing them that this is the plan. One of my friends always says, trust us and trust the process. Believe me, we will get you there. So you need to patiently work with people. And then you also need to be somebody who is able to keep their mouth shut. Because you need to do more listening than talking. And when you talk, you have to use the right words so that your words are not misunderstood and that you don't say something that will be offensive to people. Especially when you are working maybe in countries where there is Muslims and Christians, and maybe the conflict is between Muslims and Christians, whatever, you really have to be somebody who chooses their words carefully. And guys, let me tell you, you need to be somebody who prays a lot, like on the spot, like sometimes you'll be stuck, right? And you can see that, this thing now is going to go out of hand. And then you just need to pray. I remember in 2010, I was working with, you've all heard of SADC, right? Regional Economic Community based in Havana. So I was working with them, finalizing the mediation guidelines for the mediation structure that they needed to put in place. And they were now going to have a double troika meeting, the organ on politics, defense, and security. They're going to have a double troika meeting to review the guidelines. Double troika is the organ for defense, politics, and security, and also the ministerial organ, I think, something like that. So anyway, so it was 6 countries represented by people, and these are serious statutory meetings where these diplomats are talking with their flags in front of them. This is serious stuff. And so they were reviewing these guidelines. And I had been contracted by GIZ, who were supporting the organ, to put this together. And then I had suggested that let us brief the chair of this double troika meeting, walk him through the guidelines, point out areas that may be problematic, and help him in terms of crafting the responses that he can give. And then they said, no, it's fine. And then the head of GIZ said, do you want Busi in the meeting on that day? And they said, no, we'll manage. And I said, this is going to be problematic. Anyway, then the director said, okay, but she must just be on standby so that if we need her, we will phone. Okay, so I went to the office. Fortunately, Gaborone is a very small town. The meeting started in the morning at around, I think it was 11 or past 10. They called, we want the consultant here. She needs to come in. So I went. But of course now, you are coming in the middle of a meeting that has already started. And I remember in particular, there was one guy from Mozambique. He had not been participating in any of the consultations and workshops and so forth that had resulted in this guideline that was now being tabled. And he was from Home Affairs, not Foreign Affairs. Normally it's Foreign Affairs officials who come. And this guy, I think, was just out on a mission to show that he knew, he was a lawyer, show that he knew stuff, I don't know. But he made things very difficult. And now the chair was his own compatriot and a diplomat. And I could see that things are going out of hand here. Anyway, fortunately, then there was a tea break. And so I then went to this guy and I said to him, okay, so you are suggesting that this structure should not be under the executive structure of the SADC. Can you tell me, the staff that will work in the mediation unit, who is going to supervise them? And he said, well, the executive director, of course. I said, but how does he do that if this is a standalone structure that is outside? But initially I had to massage his ego, so I complimented him on his ability to articulate himself so well in English, given the fact that Mozambique is a Lusophone country and so forth. So he kind of got, more user-friendly. And then when I mentioned this, he then said, okay. But then when the meeting resumed, he still went on about it. It took a senior diplomat from Namibia, who was the most senior in the room, to say, we have been working on this for the past 2 years. More senior representatives of your governments have come and have agreed to this. We can't now derail this process and go back. So can we just do what we've been mandated to do, which is review this guideline and see whether there are any gaps or any major things that need to be changed so that it can then move to the ministerial council and be approved for tablet to summit. But meanwhile, all this is happening and I am just in deep prayer that, Lord, this can't fail under my watch. There's a colleague, Laurie Nathan, who had started the process, again, a South African, a very able South African. And then Chris Spies and I and Andres had also worked on this. And I was like, now, Lord, I am a woman. And if this fails, what does it say about me as a woman peace builder? So there are times when it's touch and go, and you just need to keep praying and praying and praying all the time. So in a nutshell, I would say that is what I do, okay? It's very rewarding, it's exciting, you get to meet all sorts of interesting people. You get to build relationships with people. For instance, when I was working in Malawi back then in 2010, I worked with a group of internal mediators called NAFPESCO. And one of the members of NAFPESCO that we worked very closely with is now the president of Malawi. So, you get to meet these, very high profile, important people. The lady that I talked about, the one who was the Undersecretary General mediating in Malawi, Madam Zaude, she is now the president of Ethiopia. So yeah, you get to work with people like that and it's exciting. And it is a rewarding career, I must say. So let me stop there and then open it up for questions, open it up for discussion before we wrap it up. So this is your chance, guys. Yes, I see Mapanzure's siblings, their hand is up.
Yeah.
Unmute yourself and then speak. Mapanzure siblings, your hand is up. Do you want to comment? Maybe in the meantime,
No.
then. Yes, carry on, but you are muted.
No, it was a mistake. Sorry.
Okay. I see Lyle's hand is up.
How do you know that people have a problem?
Okay, that's a very important question. How do you know that people have a problem? Okay, so there's different ways, and it also depends on the nature of the conflict or the kind of conflict that it is. So if it is a big national conflict, right, we often have what we call early warning systems, where there are certain behaviors that people start looking at, what we call indicators. And so we will get reports, right, from people in that country or in that town that we seem to see a lot of young people coming into shops. For instance, in Kenya in 2007, remember Kenya during the elections, there was a lot of violence back then. One of the indicators that came through was an increase in the number of people that were buying machetes. Machetes are those sickles, you know, that people use for harvesting. Harvesting what? Grass, I think you call it grass. Yeah, I don't know what you call it in English, but, or sometimes you will start seeing a lot of young people coming together into gangs, forming gangs. So those indicators are what we look for first and foremost. And then sometimes there are people in country, for instance, SADC has an early warning unit and they have country focal persons. So these people can also submit reports where they say, it seems things are tensing up in our countries. Yes, that's a machete. Okay, those things. It seems things are tensing up in our country and we think there might be something brewing. Now, sometimes one of the parties to the conflict can actually send a request to the United Nations or to a group of religious leaders or to elders in a country and say, I seem to be having problems with party B. And I think we're at a stage now where we need outside help to come and help us resolve this problem. And then at times, it is things like maybe arrests of opposition supporters, arrests of young people. It could be an increase in violence against women. So many indicators that we look at that would then help us know that that place, that town, that country is about to go into conflict. And what we also try and do now is to take what we call a preventive approach, where we intervene before the conflict actually gets out of hand or becomes violent. And this is where oftentimes South Africa is accused of, oh, you're doing this useless, quiet diplomacy. But the idea, and that's most of our work, is really done below the radar, behind the scenes, right? And we will be trying to arrest violence and major fights from breaking out. I don't know if I've answered your question, Mr. Lyle. Any other questions or comments? Have I answered you? Lyle, talk to us.
Lyle, you can unmute and speak, yeah? Was your question answered?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Can I
Okay.
ask something, Auntie?
Mhm.
How then do we, maybe if you can give us like an example, a practical example of a conflict at home. Do we have formal steps that we need to follow for us to get to a point where we resolve the conflict? I want to know that because most of the times the conflicts that we are faced with, they happen at home every day and we find ourselves not able to come to a solution. And what happens is that, yes, we spend a lot of days not talking to each other, and yeah, it's not nice.
Okay. So yeah, there's several steps that we can follow. The first one, as I say, is to prevent the conflict from happening in the first place. And that can be done through, like for instance, maybe you are a brother and sister, right? Because this is a kids program. So I'm not going to talk about husband and wife. Okay. So you maybe you know that your big brother is always bullying you and you don't like it. So when you are playing nicely, you can just say to him, Lyle, you have a way of talking to me and bossing me around. I don't like it. I really wish you could stop that because it makes me upset. It makes me angry. It makes me not want to play with you anymore. And yet I love you. You're my brother. I would want us to always be happy together, So it is about communicating your preferences, communicating what you like and what you don't like. That's the first step. Now, when conflict has happened, I think it's also very important to find a way quickly of making the other person understand how that conflict makes you feel. And so again, the thing is, don't accuse them because none of us like to be accused. None of us like to be lectured to, right? But if okay, so maybe Uncle Shepherd has said something that I really don't like. If I say to him, Uncle Shepherd, I don't like the way you talk. You always are just speaking without thinking. Why do you open your mouth before you think? You must be considerate of other people's feelings. Guess what? He is going to be different, right? But if I say to him, Uncle Shepherd, what you've just said has really hurt me. I really feel so dejected now, and I'm even afraid to continue talking to you. I would prefer that maybe next time that I do something wrong, just say it nicely. You don't have to shout at me. That way I can correct the wrong that I have done, but not feel hurt and injured in the process. You see? So Uncle Shepherd, I've just said that. If we were in a real conflict, how would you respond, most likely?
I will consider what you have said and be positive next time.
Yes. So this is the thing, that if you talk about your own feelings, and if you talk about your own need, right, you point out the behavior that the other person has demonstrated that makes you feel angry, makes you feel sad, and the need for you to be comfortable in this relationship. More often than not, the other person is willing to listen to what you have said, and they are willing to change how they interact with you. Now, there are also times, though, when people are in conflict, and we are different individuals. Sometimes when other people are in conflict, they want to talk about it yesterday. Whereas others want to leave the room, they don't want to talk, they want to go away and cry and cool down a bit and then come back and talk. So it's important to also give each other that space to talk when both of you are ready to talk about this conflict. But I always say that it is important for us not to leave things too long before we resolve them, especially at home. Because remember, you are siblings, or you are a parent and children. How it's not nice being in the same home and you are not talking to each other and you're just or you're just shoving and pushing each other. Meanwhile, deep inside, you're missing each other, right? That's what often happens. You're really dying to talk to your brother or talk to your sister, but because you are proud, I'm not going to be the one who talks to them first. They must come to me and apologize. But remember, the Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers. So always be the one that extends that olive branch and seek to make peace. But what I should also say is that let us also be mindful of how we treat each other, especially to us boys and girls. Sometimes we just are rough for the sake of it, I'm just going to be like that. I'm going to be a bully. But what do you get from being a bully? Nothing. All you get is, I did that to them. I said that to them. But in the long run, it doesn't help. So let's just try and be nice to each other. Remember the golden rule. Do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. Especially around toys and PlayStations and that. I find that, especially if it's two brothers, the one brother cries so much after 5 minutes of, the other brother being over his allocated time. And then this one now gets the chance to play. And guess what? They are hawking this thing for an hour. And you say, but you've just been crying over 5 minutes. How do you think your brother feels now if you're hawking this thing for an hour? So let's just learn to share and learn to give each other a chance and respect each other. If, again, you are in a conflict that you can't resolve yourselves, quickly run to your mom, to your dad, and say, we're about to fight and I don't want to fight. Come and help us, But don't just bury it all inside. Even in school, guys, if there's someone bullying you at school and you can't stand up to that bully, run to your teacher or tell your parents early, right? Before they start doing a lot of bad things to you. At the first sight of bullying, go and report to an adult who can help you if you can't fight yourself, okay? I don't know if that is helpful.
It was, Auntie. It is.
Are there any other questions or comments? Let's talk, guys. I've been talking for an hour, so now it's your time to talk.
Some have fallen off.
Yes, I noticed.
Maybe data ran out. No more question. Is Magawongo still there or is now gone?
I'm still here. It's just that I'm eating.
You don't have
you eat?
I didn't eat.
I'm saying you don't have a question, Magawongo. You don't know how much you get paid to be a peace and conflict resolver.
Okay, I think I have a question. What about when I want to watch on my tablet and my dad says I can't watch on my tablet, but I'm still watching on my tablet, then he takes away all my electronics. Because that's what he did.
I remember.
Yeah, you changed the background.
Answer, right? Remember that your life has more than just playing with your PlayStation and your electronic devices, right? What happens with young boys especially? You play with these things, you don't want to talk to anybody, you are at home, you are in your own room playing with your PlayStation or your phone, and there's no family time anymore. So parents sometimes need to set those boundaries. They need to tell you that you have 1 hour of PlayStation time every day. And once that hour is up, it's up. Okay? So you also need to appreciate that and allow your dad to be dad, right? Now, if you find the way he says it, sometimes maybe in front of your friends and it's really embarrassing, or then he goes to church and he tells everybody at church about what you do. Now, that's not nice, right? So you can just say to him at home, you know, Dad, yeah, just go easy on this one. You don't need to tell all the neighbors, you know, just, yeah, you know, cut me some slack a bit, so that you can, yeah, so that you're not too hurt yourself about how dad does this. But also the easier part is to just, yeah, just work within the times that you've been given. Then you don't have to have all your electronic gadgets taken away from you, Maka. Does that work? Hey, Maka. Magabong.
Yeah, I think so.
So you can try it for a few days and see how it will go.
Okay.
Okay, so the question about how much do you get paid
I
as
don't
a peace builder?
ask about money. They didn't come today.
You know what? I think you earn what you work for. You work for every penny that you earn. Let me say that. So, okay, the way I work, right? I work as a consultant. I'm contracted with specific deliverables by the UN system. And you get into a country, the money is decent. So we work on what is called a rate. So you have your daily professional fee that you charge, and then by the number of days. But you know, the normal 8-hour working day doesn't apply to us, because sometimes we have meetings in the evening, trying to understand the environment, the landscape that you're operating in. Weekends, you are meeting people. At night, you are writing reports and drafting, because sometimes, especially when you're deployed as a peace and development advisor, you also have a lot of reporting that you need to do to headquarters. You have reporting that you need to do to the UN country team, or to a professional, an envoy, if there's someone coming into the country and mediating who has been deployed by the Secretary General. So you find that you get paid for 8 hours, but essentially you're working maybe 16, 20-hour days. But yes, the money is very, very good. That's what I would say. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, most
But as I
see Zena just joined us now. You used 2 o'clock for UK, right? Not for South Africa. Zena, how are you?
I'm fine.
You came in late today.
Yeah.
You missed everything, yeah?
Yeah, you kind of told me.
You're making noise.
Yes.
All right, so I think we're done for today. These guys have all fallen off. Umam Kachena ngazi ukuthi who is there. All right, thank you so much.
That's me, sweetheart. So we were watching from the other room.
Eh?
It's me. We're watching from the other room. Sorry.
Oh, Umam Kachena.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
okay.
All right, so thank you so much, Ncube, on behalf of the children, most of whom have fallen off the platform. I guess it's airtime or the batteries have run out or whatever the case could be. We'll upload the YouTube video. I think they'll catch up there. Zena, did you have a question?
Um, when were you supposed to, when were we supposed to start?
We're supposed to start at 11:45 your time.
Okay.
Yeah, because you are 2 hours behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so next time, I think next time we'll be in the same time zone, so it will be fine when we start next year again.
Yeah.
All right, so you can just pray for us so that we can end.
Let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father in heaven, thank you for this beautiful day you've given us, Lord. Please guide us as we leave the meeting, and please help us to have a blessed Sabbath. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.